Hi, and welcome to the third session of Introduction to Java, offered to you by the Clifton Park Half Moon Library. My name is Scott Bartow, and where we left off last session was we finished up talking about strings and all the different, remembering that a string is a class, and a class is going to have methods or functions that you can use whenever you're dealing with the class string. So some of the methods that we used were the length, index of, lowercase, uppercase, and they were just all different methods that were part of the string class that allowed us to manipulate and to view a string. Now remember, a string is surrounded by, it's a data type that's surrounded by double quotes or single quotes. And it's just a string of characters put together. So if you look at my screen right now, you can see that I am printing out the string hello space world. And let's do a quick review on the basic setup of a Java program. Okay, so first you have to start with, if you look off to the left of my screen, you can see I'm going to type in the following code. So I'll move the code that I have up here or down here, and I'll put the code. So whenever you're creating a Java program, you want to have a class, right? So it's public class, and then the name of the class. Now, the name of the class should start with a capital letter, and the name of the class also has to be the name of your Java file. And the Java file will have an extension of .java. So I'm going to call my class, I'll call it Scott's class, and then follow the name of the class with a curly bracket, hit enter a few times, and now I'll do a closing curly bracket, which should be under the P in public for the class. All right, then inside my class, so I'll indent, I have to have a main method, all right? And the way to set up the main method is public static. Now this is just review. This is what, in all the exercises I put out in Google Classroom, this is what I have you do is create a class and then create a main method inside the class, and then do whatever the exercise is talking about, whatever the topic is. All right, so to create the main method, you have to do public space static space void space main is the name of the method, and then a parenthesis, and then I'm going to have parameters. So it'll be string, and this would be bracket, opening and closing brackets, space args, and then a closing parenthesis, and then followed by a space, and then a opening curly bracket. Hit enter a couple of times, and close up the main method with a closing curly bracket. And then inside the main method, we've been putting a command to print, to have a print line. And the way to do that is you indent inside the main method, and you start with a capital S system .out .print ln print line parenthesis, and then you put whatever you want inside, and I'll put the string hi and welcome, double quotes, and then I'll close out that parenthesis. And Java statements end with a semicolon. And what I'll do is I will get rid of this down here. And I will run this program in our W3 Schools Java editor, which compiles the program and then runs it. All right, so Java public class shot class is public, should be declared in Java. You cannot find symbol for. I put instead of putting void, I put voice, VOIC. So I replace the C with a D, and now I have the word void. I'll run it again, and this should work and print out hi and welcome. Nope, still has an error. Class shot class is public. Public class shot class to be declared in public class shot class. For some reason doesn't like shot class. Let me see if I just change it to main. What will happen? The text editor might not take another class name. Let's see what happens. Public class main, public static void, and there it goes. So the reason why I wouldn't take my class name of shot class is, I believe, because the Java editor that we're using is only set up to point towards the main class. A class it's called main. So that's just a limitation of the editor that we're using. All right, so that's the basic format of setting up a class with the main method inside the class, and then doing a print line. All right, so like I said, last session we talked about strings. This session we're going to jump into talking about math. All right. So math is a method that can be used to find the highest value of x and y. All right, so the method that's used with math. All right, so Java math is a class. All right, and it has many methods, just like Java string is a class that has many methods to help you manipulate strings. Well, the Java math is a class that has a bunch of methods that let you to do math in Java. All right, so the first method we're going to talk about is called max, M-A-X, and let's say. So inside our main method, what I'll do is I'll hit enter a couple times and indent. And what I'll do is I'll call the class math dot, and then MAX is the method name, parenthesis, and then I'll say 5, comma, space 10. All right, and close the Java statement with a semicolon. Oops, that's bad. With a semicolon right there. Nope. There we go. All right, so. All right, so. All right, so what I can do is take this statement and pop it into a print line. Well, actually, what I'll do is I'm going to create a variable. All right, it'll have to be. I'm going to make it an int, a type of int, a data type using int, which is a whole number. All right, because I'm dealing with whole numbers, 5 and 10. So I'll call this my. I'll call it math example equals math.max parenthesis 5 comma 10 end parenthesis. All right, and what I'll do is I'll do a sysout print line, and I will say I will print out the value that's going to be in the variable named math ex. All right, so let's run this, and what it will do is it will call the math class, and it will call the match method inside the math class, and it will determine out of these numbers which one is the match. Is it 5 or is it 10? So it should print out the number 10. And there it is, number 10. Took a while for it to run, but there it is. Now, say I have a whole bunch of other numbers. And 12. Right, so if I run it this time, out of all these numbers, it should print out the number 55 because that is the maximum number. Oh, didn't like that. Math, match, int is not applicable. Natural length. So math. Looks like it doesn't like double is not applicable. Oh, yeah. Huh. It looks like match can only the method match maybe can only take two arguments. And we have 5, 10. So that works fine. Let me just rerun it. And what the screen on the right-hand side screen will run it and find the match of 10. So if I change this 5 to 23 and run it, it should print out 23. So it looks like you can only compare using the match method. You can only use 2 numbers. Yes, it will find the highest value of X or Y, which is only 2 arguments. And now another method as part of the math class is min. So what I'll do is I'll comment out this match line, and why don't I do min? All right, so I will create a variable int. Do int math ex equals math. So the math class dot min is the method name, parenthesis, and I'll say between 3 and 4. All right. Now print out the value of the variable math example. And I run it, it should print out the minimum number, which would be 3 math min, math, comma, min. Sorry for all the errors. Let me include the semicolon. Maybe that'll help. Yes. There we go. I forgot the semicolon at the end of the statement. And so it prints the minimum number out of 3, between 3 and 4, which is 3. All right, so using the math class, let's move on. Okay, what else is available? The square root. Square root returns the square root of s. So square root method is, and I'm just going to pop it in here instead of min. So I'm calling the math class dot sqrt, and this only takes one argument. which is, say we use 64. The square root of 64 should be 8, right? 8 times 8 is 64. And I will print out math EX, the value of the variable math EX. And so if I run this, I should have an output on my the right side of my screen of 8. No, didn't like that either. Let's see, SURT. Incompatible types. So it doesn't like the variable being an int. So how about a double? Try that. There we go. 8.0, right? So it didn't like the int because when you call the math class and you call using the SURT, the square root method, it might return not a whole number, right? So say I did the square root of 63. Then it should probably return 7 point something. And since I have my variable math ES, I had it defined with a type of int, which is a whole number. When you're using the square root method, you have to have a different type other than int because it might return something like this off to the right of my screen. It returns 7.93725, blah blah blah. So it's got a ton of decimal places, so int would not be compatible with that. All right, so that's the third method used in the math class. And let's see, and there's a whole host of math methods that you can use. All right, so let's try this. All right, there's something called random, the random method. All right, and so let's put that right directly in our print line. So what I want to do is I want to do math dot. So math is the class dot random is the method. Parentheses, so it has no parameters for the method random. And then I'm going to comment out this line up here with 2 forward slashes for a single line comment. And now I'm going to run it. And it'll generate a random number. All right, so it generates a huge decimal place number, right? And it'll generate a number between 1.0 and what is it? Between 0 and 1. And so if I run this again, right now it generated 0.035. If I run it again, it'll produce something else because it's randomly picking a number. And say second time I run it, it produces 0.11024. So that's the use of random. The random math method is used quite often in video games and in any kind of gaming. Now, if you wanted your number to be a whole number, then using the random method, one way to do that is I'll create a variable with a data type of int, right? Because we want a whole number between a certain range. And I will do int random. And that's my variable name equals. And now I'm going to manually cast it. I'm going to manually typecast it with a parenthesis int, and then a parenthesis math dot dot random parenthesis space, and then multiply it by if I want the number that's randomly generated to be between 0 and 100, then I would multiply it times 101. All right, and let's put a comment over here. 0, 0 to 100. All right, and inside my print statement, I'm going to print out the value of the variable random num. All right, and I'll run this, and it should generate a number between 0 and 100, a whole number, a whole integer. Let's say it didn't like something, int random num equals, that's good, oh, I'm missing a parenthesis after 101. Close that out. All right, so up front, you have the manual typecasting of parenthesis int parenthesis, and then I've got math.random parenthesis, so no arguments for the random method, times 101, and so I needed an end parenthesis after 101. So if I run it, I don't know what it's going to print out because the number is randomly generated. Oh, it wanted my semicolon at the end of my Java statement. So I'll run it one more time. Hopefully this will work. And it randomly generates 21. I'll run it again. It'll randomly generate what? 6. All right. So that's how you can randomly generate between 0 and 100. All right. So now there's a whole host of other math methods that you can use. I just touched on a few of them: min, max, square root, random. All right. So that's it for math. And now let's move on to, let's see. Let's move on to Booleans. All right, so Booleans in Java are lowercase true and lowercase false. And so the Boolean data type takes on just a couple of values. All right. So say we want, for Boolean, say you have, let's see, why don't I get rid of, I'll get rid of these. Yeah. All right, so say I have int x equals 10, semicolon, oops, semicolon, right there. Okay, hit enter. Then I have another variable of type int of y. It's going to equal -5. How about -10? Semicolon. All right. Hit enter a couple of times. Now in my print statement, All right. In my print statement, what I'll do is I will get my print statement come up. Come on. Let's go. Okay, so inside the print statement, I'll take out random num. And what I'll do is I'll say x, right? X is 10. Is it greater than y? Which is negative 10. Y is negative 10. So this should print out true. Lowercase the word true. All right. And so if I run it, it comes out true. Now if I reverse this, what if I said if it equals? What if it equals y? This would be false, right? So to print out lowercase the word false. It's just taking a while. Up, it printed out that equals 10. Oh, x equals y. Oh, what it did is it printed out, oh, I gave x the value of y. All right, so that didn't work so well. How about just, so x has a value of 10, y has a value of negative 10. What if I said is y less than or equal to, if is x less than or equal to y? That's going to be false. 10 is not less than or equal to negative 10. I'll run this. And I get false. All right, so that's that's a general idea about Booleans in Java. Okay, what I had to use when I used equal to, if you just use a single equal sign in Java, it will assign the value. So when I inside the print statement, when I said x equals y, well, I gave x, I'm giving x, assigning x the value of y. So it made x negative 10, and that's what it printed out. But if I want to compare the two, then I need equal. All right, so is 10 equal to negative 10? This would be false once again. So I had to use the comparison operator, which is equals, not the assignment operator, which is just equals. Now, what if I use the comparison operator of not equal? So exclamation point equal sign. Are they not equal? This would be true. So if I run it, it will come back as true. And it does. All right. So that's it for Boolean. There's not a whole lot to talk about with that. So we're going to move on to conditionals. All right, which is conditionals are if-else statements, and they're common, excuse me, in every programming language. And when we're talking about conditionals, we're talking about using the comparison operators: equal, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, not equal to. So let's see. All right, so the way to start off your conditional statement will be, I'm going to get rid of this. Actually, I'm going to keep those. And what I'll do is I'll have int x equals 10, int y is going to equal, I'm going to say 5. All right, so I'll start my conditional off with the if statement. All right. And so you say if space, and then in parentheses, you have your conditional. All right. So if x is greater than, how about if x is less than y? And you do a space and then a curly bracket. Curly bracket. Let's see. Hit enter a couple times, and then we'll do a closing curly bracket under the I and if. All right. And what I'll do is I'll copy this print line. So if, I'm going to make it equal to. So if x equal y, take away the lesson sign. And inside the if, so you want to indent inside your if, I'm going to print out, if this is true, which we know it's not, I'm going to print out what, so I'll do double quote, I'll do the string, and I'll say s is equal to y. And I'll do a double quote. All right, that's my if statement. And I'll get rid of this print line. All right, so if I run it, nothing should happen, right? X is not equal to y. I've got semicolon, error expected int y equals 5. If x equal y, like that. Didn't like the int. All right, so what if we say if, what if we say if x is greater than 10? So what happens if we run that? Int y equals 5. So for some reason it doesn't like this. Let me just try something. Instead of the variables, why don't we try a couple of values? So if 10 is greater than 5, then I'll say in my statement, I'll say that 10 is greater than 5. Okay. All right, I'll run that. Because that'll be true, right? 10 is greater than 5, so I should print out, for some reason. I see what it's doing. It didn't like the semicolon. At the end of my statement, int y equals 5, it didn't like that it didn't have a semicolon. I think that's the problem. So if I run this, it should say true, and then I can put in back, I should put the variables back in. All right, 10 is greater than 5. All right, so going forward, if I have s is greater than y, then I'll say, let's just say s greater than y. And I will run it and print this baby out. and it should say x is greater than 5 because x has a value of 10, y has a value of 5, and 10 is greater than 5. X is greater than y. All right, so there we go. Okay. So that's your basic if statement, right? And if the if didn't work, right? So say I change it to if x is less than y. Oops. Wrong spot. So I flip this sign. I say less than y, right? So that's not going to be true. All right. And what I'll do is, if this is not true, this if statement, it'll drop down outside this closing curly bracket and do the next thing, which I will do a print line of the string. How about the if statement wasn't true? So I'll run this. And if x is less than y, which is not true, it won't print out x is greater than y. And it'll drop down and say the if statement wasn't true. And that's what it does. If you look to the right of my screen, that's exactly what it prints out. All right. So, so next, we're going to talk about the else statement. All right. So if the if isn't true, we can just do an else, and we don't need a conditional after else. We do need the curly bracket. So I have an open curly bracket, and I will do this. And what I need is a closing curly bracket under the E and else. Right, there we go. And so just like what we had before, if the if didn't work, then we printed out this statement, the if statement wasn't true. But now what we can do is, if the if doesn't work, then we're always going to do this else, right? And so if I run this, it should once again print out the if statement wasn't true. And that's what it does. Right? So else doesn't take a conditional like the if, right? The if has in parentheses x less than y, so it has a condition here. If that's true, then it'll do what's inside the if. If that's false, it'll drop down and do whatever inside the else. All right, else is just all else. That's why you don't, after the word else, you don't need in parentheses any kind of conditional, because it's all the conditions that weren't met with the if. All right, so that's pretty straightforward. Let's see. All right, let's talk about the, there's one more conditional statement, and that's the else space if. So we talked about the if, we talked about the else if, and we talked about the else. Now we're going to talk about the else if. So just like the if, you're going to need in parentheses the conditional. All right, so say we have an integer, and we'll use like military time. All right, so int, and we call this time. The variable name will be time. We'll say equal, and we'll start with early morning, right? Which would be like, say like, I don't know, 6. So 6 is 6 in the morning. All right, I can get rid of this variable, I. All right, so if, and these will all be, get rid of that. All right, so if space parenthesis, and here's my conditional for the if, time equals, the time is actually less than time is less than, say, 11, right? 11. And then we'll have parentheses, space, and we'll have a curly brackets. Hit enter a couple times, do the closing curly bracket under the I and if, then come back up, align, and indent. And here we're going to do a sys print. So system dot out dot print line. The more you practice doing some of the foundational commands, the better you get at it. That's why I reviewed with the beginning of this session. I reviewed how to create your class and how to create your main method. And also the system out print line. All right, so if the time is in military time, if it's less than 11, we're going to say, we'll say good morning. Good morning, parenthesis, and or double quote parenthesis, and semicolon. Now, outside the closing curly brackets, we're going to say else if space, and here we need another conditional. Time is here. So if we hit the first if, the time is less than 11, 10 all the way to 0. We'll say good morning, but now we want else if. What if time is less than, and what's that? 5:17. So if time is less than, we'll say 18, 6 o'clock in the evening, and I'll close this out with a parenthesis and curly brackets. And then I'll go back up here and I'll indent my sysprint. System, dot out, the print line, parenthesis, and I'll say good afternoon. With the semicolon, capitalize the M in morning. And then, oops, closing curly brackets. All right, so hit enter. And lastly, we're going to have else. We don't have a conditional for else because it covers all else, which in this case would be the if is less than 11. And then if it's not less than 11, if it's less than 18, which would be numbers from 11 all the way to 17. 17 being 5 o'clock in the evening. And then the else is going to cover everything else. So that would cover 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. And that will be our good night message. So I have to close the else with a curly bracket, indent, and I'll do my system, dot out, a print line, parenthesis, double quotes, and we'll say good. Good. Quotes, parenthesis, and semicolon. All right, so I've got my variable named time. I've got it set with a value of 6. So that should make the first statement correct, right? So time of 6 will be less than 11. It should print out good morning. So whenever you have a conditional statement in your program, you want to make sure you print out everything. Doesn't like something. Good afternoon. Doesn't like. Good. Oh, there's no. If you look over to the right, when you run your Java programs, when it tries to compile it, quite often you might get an error, and it will show you the error and where the problem is. All right. So if you look off to the right of my screen, it says Java 9 error unclosed string literal, and system out print line double quote good space afternoon. There's no double quote after afternoon. So I go into my program, and so they do give you clues as to what the errors are, and to help you debug your program quickly. So I put the double quote in there, and I can rerun now, and hopefully there's no more errors. Reach the end of the file while parsing good. So it doesn't like something. One error. What could it be? All right, so let's say it's something in my conditional statement. Time is less than that, then it'll print this with a semicolon. That. Else if time is less than 18, with a semicolon, system out print line good afternoon. System out print line good night. Else. Oh, there's a GO down at the bottom here. So somehow, I don't know if you look at the left side of my screen, there's a GOO somehow got typed in incorrectly. So I'll delete that. See, it's gone now. If I run it, that should be fine. So there should be no more errors. One more error. I've got class. I've got, there's no semicolon here for the to close out my or not semicolon, closing curly brackets to close out my main method. So I have closing curly brackets. If you look on the left side of my screen, closing curly brackets to close out the class, the first line. I've got a closing curly brackets to close out the second line, the main method. And I'm using curly brackets to close out the if, the else if, and the else. All right, so now it should work. And it should print out good morning. And like I was saying before I got my error, when you have conditionals, you want to test out every condition. All right. So that's what we're going to do right now. If this works. Good morning. For some reason it's not printing out correctly. And there we go. All right. So it prints out good morning. So I still have to test out my else if and my else. So if I set the time to say like 13, now time has a value of 13 and should print out good afternoon. And it does. And the final test that we have for the else is if time is 18 to 24. All right, so if I do 23, enter, I get time a value of 23, and I run my program. And this time it should hit the else, and it should say good night, and it does. So I tested my whole program out, and so that's for conditionals. You've got if, else, space if, and you've got the else. All right, so there is a way to write these statements in a shorthand form. Right. Let me show you that. So the way to do shorthand for conditionals in Java, what we can do is we can keep our variable name time, and we can have time, the time variable set, and then below it, what we should do is create a string variable. All right, so it's type string, capital S string, and we're going to call this result equals, and then in parentheses you do time. If time is less than, say, 18. If it's less than 18, and we'll have end parenthesis, and then a space and a question mark, double quote, we'll say good day. We'll say, oh, where is it? Yeah, good. We'll say good day. And then double quote. And then a colon, if that's not true, and we'll say good evening. Double quote, good evening. Double quote, and then we just finish our statement with a semicolon. All right, so in Java, when you have a multi-line comment, so I'm going to comment out all this code down below, the if, else if, and the else. So you do the / and we do a asterisk, and then way down here, I will do asterisk / and you see all this code. When I do comment it out correctly with a multi-line comment, it turns everything green. So you know it's commented out. It's not going to be executed when you run your program. All right, so this is the shorthand of an if-else. All right, so I create a string. I use the string data type, and I call the variable, I name the variable result equals, and then in parentheses you have a conditional, right? If time is less than 18, then I put a question mark. If it is, if that's true, then it will do this first part. It'll print good day. I just have to spell day correctly. And then if it's false, you put a semicolon after what you want done when it's true. So we're giving the variable name result, we're giving it a value of good day. But if that is false, we'll give it a value of good evening, whatever after the semicolon. All right, so what we will do, the only thing we want to do now after that is to do system out the print line, parenthesis, and we want to print the result, the value of the variable name result. And we'll do a semicolon, or parenthesis, and semicolon. All right, so is time less than 18? No, it's not. Right now it's set at a value of 23, so it's going to print out the second thing. It's going to print out when this conditional is false, it's going to print out the item, or it's going to give the value to the variable name result after the colon in our conditional statement. So it should print out good evening. And I will run it. Let's see what happens. And there it is on the right side of my screen. You can see good evening. Now we have to test for when time is less than 18, when that statement is true. So we'll just reset the value of a variable named time, and we'll give it a value of 7. All right, so now in our conditional statement, time has a value of 7. 7 is less than 18, so it should print out good morning. All right, so it's just a shortened way to write an if-else statement. Using the, so you have the conditional in parentheses, and you use the question mark. And then if it's true, you do this. If it's false, you do whatever after the colon. So in this case, it should print out good day. And it does. All right. So that's it for conditional statements. Just remember, in Java, it's if, else, space if, and else. The if and the else if statements have to have a conditional in parentheses right after the words if or else if. The else statement does not have to have a conditional because else includes all else, every other condition possible. Let's see. So that's it for conditionals in Java. Next, I want to just have a few minutes left of this session, but I want to touch on the subject of the switch statement. And switch is, let's say, you can select one of many code blocks to be executed. And this is very handy if you have this really long if-else statement with a whole bunch of conditionals. If, else, if, else, if, else, those are fine. But if you have if, else if, else if, else if, else if, and then finally an else, it gets very confusing. So using the switch command in Java is it's just much neater, more efficient code. So what you do with switch, so the switch expression is evaluated one time. The value of the expression is compared with the values of each case. All right, so let me just write out what it looks like real fast. So you have the command switch, and then an expression. Like before, we had time is less than 11. Right? So you have that expression, and you close it in parentheses, just like an else or like an if or else if, and you follow it with a curly bracket. All right, and then down below you're going to have a curly bracket that closes the switch, and then up above here we're going to indent, and here we're going to have cases. So case S. What are you going to do? I'm sorry. So case S, and then you put a colon. And then inside the case, you're going to do a block of code. You enter, and then you're going to break. Semicolon. You enter. Case Y S. You enter. And then we'll have another code block. And then case Z, colon, enter, code block. And then finally, this takes the place of else in a if-else conditional. And you have the word default, or else is what they're saying. Colon, and then you do something when none of those cases are true. right? So that's the basic structure of a switch. Get rid of some of these lines here. So if you're going to have a big, long conditional statement that has multiple else ifs, you're much better off using the switch, which allows you, instead of having all these else ifs, you can just do a case, different cases, and then have a default at the end, which is similar to the else. So I just wanted to touch on a switch. When we pick it up next session, which will be the last session for Introduction to Java, we will go deeper into using the switch, and we'll also talk about some other final concepts in Java, like the while loop, the for loop, and using arrays. So I look forward to talking to you then. Once again, this has been the third session of Introduction to Java, offered to you by the Clifton Park Half Moon Library. And thanks so much for joining me. And I hope to see more of you accept the invitation out there on Google Classroom. The exercises have been posted, and I'm available for any questions you might have. And so please accept the invitation. And I look forward to talking to you next time. Thanks a lot.